It's just absolutely shocking. But a couple of things are going through my mind. First, this is a high-profile, high-level indictment. The Department of Justice, the FBI, they certainly need something like this in light of a lot of the criticism, what's been happening in the past. So the first thing was, okay, what's the merit of this? Where are they really going with it? And then as you get into the allegations, it's just almost like a gangster movie, with the gambling and the poker games and the fixing the games, and things like that. So, it's early. It's certainly sensational. But I think, we're going to learn a lot as this case progresses.
Antonio, just need you to unmute yourself if you'd like to join today's show. There you are.
Trey, how does this, it sounds different because you said it's like a gangster movie, and it does. It sounds like we're talking about, Goodfellas or, how does this all come to light? You know what I mean? So does this come from somebody in the poker game that felt like they were wronged and they decide to go to the feds? How does this all come to?
That's an excellent question. And the reason is we don't know who the target defendants are here. So is the FBI are they going after the mob, and they're using high-level, high-profile NBA players, to help as witnesses to get them involved and maybe flip them? Are they actually trying to attack the NBA players themselves, some of the NBA? So we don't really know what the goal of the government is, who the target defendants are. And this could have come down through happenstance, through somebody could have been upset about the poker game. Somebody could have lost one of the bets. Somebody could have overheard the players talking about this. We don't really know how it came about. But it certainly sparked the investigation that's been ongoing for years, 11 states. So don't really know how it could have come about, but like you suggested, yeah, it could have come about from somebody who's just upset about what happened with the poker game and found out he was manipulated and cheated on. Or maybe somebody overheard something, or they're monitoring the mob families and stumbled upon this. We don't really know.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for Tony Soprano and Christopher Moltisanti to appear and say he's into us for 3 boxes of ziti. I mean, that's all that's missing from reading these reports this morning, right? So with your extensive experience in these cases, what do you anticipate? Now, every case is different. Every person's different. But what do you anticipate these defendants doing next? They're going to lawyer up, or are they going to run to the feds to try and get a deal right away and tell on everyone else so they don't get into trouble? Or is this going to be an extensive process that takes years and they will fight it in court? Maybe somewhere in between.
Well, they're going to lawyer up. The lawyers are going to get aggressive, see what type of evidence is out there. Once they get arraigned, the judge is going to set some deadlines and timelines in terms of when discovery needs to be exchanged, motion work, things like that. So the case is going to have time to develop. But it's really going to depend on what the government wants. Are they going to be offering a lot of witnesses the option to get dismissed in exchange for immunity, to testify against others? And some will undoubtedly accept that to get out. And then with the main targeted defendants, they're gonna put on a big defense, obviously, aggressive. And as time goes on, I think they're probably gonna add more defendants. Charges are gonna be added. We're gonna get a much clearer idea of the landscape out here in terms of who's on what, if they're going to increase, the facts supporting the indictments. So it's early, but at this point, it's the government's goal is that they're going to figure out who they really want. And then they're going to start getting witnesses on their side. They indict them under threat of going after them, and then they flip them. And depending on who plays ball and who doesn't, the government sees where it's left in terms of the evidence and the witnesses it has. And then that starts to carve out, as they get closer to trial. So it's really preliminary, but it's always about getting witnesses on your side. When you have such an expansive indictment like this, 31 people charged, it's going to increase. A lot of it is about naming people to get them to eventually come over as witnesses.
This morning, when we woke up, it was Chauncey Billups, it was Terry Rozier, and it was Damon Jones. But in the past, we saw what happened with Gilbert Arenas. We saw what happened with Malik Beasley. And you just talked about the fact that it's bigger. How much bigger do you think it is than what we're simply seeing right here and discussing today?
I think it's going to be significantly bigger. I think they got these witnesses, these defendants, enough evidence and enough of them to be able to issue the indictments now, get the ball rolling. But as I said, I think it's going to depend who the target defendants are, and it's just mind-boggling because, the three NBA players you just named are multimillionaires. They don't need the money. Why are they being wrapped up in these poker games, helping the mob cheat people? Why are they affecting their performance, to fix bets? The money they could glean, one would assume, cannot come close to what they're earning, and the harm and risk of their career. That's why there's so many questions about this. So the first step is, how strong is the government's case? Have they just named them? Do they have the evidence to really back it up? Or is this just a shot across the bow to try to get them on board for something else?
On the line now with Tre Lovell, a trial attorney who has extensive experience with fraud, Ponzi schemes, and gambling cases. Now, my question is going to bring the NBA into this conversation, and this has to be a dark day for them because now they're being roped in almost like this is their individual doings, has nothing to do with us. But unfortunately, it does. All right. The first of which is a report this morning from Dan Weike, who covers the Los Angeles Lakers for The Athletic, and is reporting that LeBron James was, quote, unaware that Damon Jones was profiting from intel about his injuries while they were concurrently teammates with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And this gentleman that's sitting above me on our Zoom call right now, Antonio Daniels, played in the game that everyone remembers from that Wizards versus Cavs playoff matchup. Damon Jones shot where LeBron taps Gilbert on the chest at the free throw line. All of a sudden, everyone is going to that game and watching it again under a microscope with a magnifying glass to see if there's any additional clues that can help tell this story. So now the NBA is in the mud. I want to now talk about their potential legal liability and how you think they will operate as a business trying to separate themselves from this very obvious poor public relations.
Sure. I mean, from the liability aspect, unless they knew about it, condoned it, ratified it, somehow let it go. I mean, they're, as an organization, they're not really legally responsible. That being said, it has tainted the NBA. They're going to have to change their policies and procedures to guard against this, because not only from the fact that it could actually happen, but even the potential of it happening and how that can taint how everybody's going to think about it. So this is an incredible black eye on the NBA. So what they need to do is they need to cooperate with the criminal investigation to whatever they can, and they need to dig deep to come up with guardrails to ensure the public that this will not happen. This cannot happen. Does it have to change bets? Are they going to now outlaw, the ability to bet on performance, where one person can affect, and fix bets? Maybe. But it is now on the NBA to change some of their policies and adopt to really not only prevent this from actually happening, but even the thought of that it could happen ever again.
How do you do that? Like, is that, and I'm asking, like, out of pure ignorance, is that really, is that realistic? Like, can that realistically happen as far as business is concerned, where you're asking the NBA or expecting the NBA to change their policies and procedures with companies that endorse and sponsor the league?
Yeah, it's going to be a very difficult lift. In terms of, how would you do it? Obviously, stiffer penalties that would come up. Not obviously if you actually do it, it's going to be a crime, but things come up that if it even looks like it could be happening, maybe you distance the players more from the gambling. Maybe say they're not allowed to go to any of these gambling events, things like that. More higher policy in terms of what they're required in their contracts. I mean, it's going to be a difficult lift. I think this is putting the spotlight on it, and the NBA is just going to have to come up with something that can really appease the public, because I think this is as much a a public image issue as it is a legal issue.
Agreed.
You're right. Both of you are right, because the integrity of the game is the number one priority in the NBA by far, more than any player. That people know that they're watching true competition, where these athletes are competing against each other without individual agendas of profiting because they are fixing games or match fixing, all the above, right? So when the integrity of the game is threatened in the way that it was indirectly today, like the NBA is involved with this, and I do agree that this is a stain that is going to take a significant amount of time to wash out, right? I think the three of us, just based on our conversation, can agree that hypothesis is, somewhat relevant. So I guess my last question to you, Tre, is if you were representing one of these individuals, based on your experience, what would you be advising them to do right now?
At this point, you start to aggressively build your defense behind the scenes. You're going to get the discovery and see what they have. You're going to go with your clients and backtrack, these games and these allegations. What happened? Who was on your side? Who knew the truth? You got to immediately get those witnesses there. Start getting any documents, text messages, things like that together that are exculpatory, that show your innocence. You have to aggressively start to defend yourself now, so that when the time comes, when they want to do plea deals and or get motions to dismiss, things like that, you're prepared. But it's the thing is, the government has the job. They've been doing this for years. They've got their documents, they've got their witnesses, they've got their defendants. This is all new to the defendants now that they just got arrested. So now they're starting from ground zero to get caught up to speed in terms of defending what the government has been working on for years. But the way you do that is you do it from a procedural standpoint. You challenge admissibility of evidence. You challenge credibility of evidence. You start to get your own evidence that shows you're exculpatory, and start to go after them.
And I structured that question the way that I did for a reason, because in a hypothetical world, let's just say you go represent Chauncey Billups, and the government says your plea deal will be, you won't do prison time. It will be significantly lowered if you are willing to admit that you were fixing games as a head coach. You were taking players out because you were intentionally trying to lose. We want you to admit guilt to that. You, as a litigator, would you advise your client to operate in his best individual interest? Or are you also thinking about the impact it could have on a business the size of the NBA as well, and the ramifications from it? What is your job as a representative of that individual?
Well, your ultimate job is the interest of your client. And so you're going to advise him as to the best case scenario for him based on the evidence that the government has, the extent of the plea deal, and then whatever ramifications follow that in terms of the NBA or whatever, what have you. But you have two things you're thinking about as an attorney here: the legal implications, which is your priority, but also, the public image of your client. Is this going to ruin your client forever? Is this plea deal, based on what they want to admit, going to completely keep them out of any other job opportunity in the NBA? As well as the fact of keeping them out of prison and things like that. So you are going to aggressively defend. You are going to build the best case for your client. And so you're in a position to leverage with the government to go back and forth, settle, to get the best that you can, which would not be prison time, some type of probation, and a lower charge that maybe he could live with. And maybe at some point, he could get his job back or get some type of involvement in NBA. But you are going to do whatever you can, not only for the legal side of your client, but also, for the future of his livelihood.
Wow. That's the answer I expected to hear, but to actually hear it's a little shocking, because they may do things through the legal procedure that are, sorry, NBA, but I got to protect my family. I got to protect my future as a human being, not just an employee.
Of course.
So we may see some of these names revealing information or acting in a way that's not in the best interest of the NBA. And I can't tell you the last time that's happened.
I know, but Rob, if we think about it this way, the NBA is going to separate themselves from these players. They're going to separate themselves from these players because of everything that we're talking about right now. Again, this is business. This is business. The league, like we talk about with teams, are always going to do, the league is going to do what's in its best interest. It's a given. Right? This league is bigger than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players. And on the flip side of that, selfishly speaking, the players have to do what's in the best interest of themselves and their families as well. Like, there would be no point, Rob, and maybe, I mean, there would be no point, and I'm speaking from a player perspective, where if this was something I was involved in, that I would ever be thinking about how this looks on the league, and I'm being honest. I would be thinking about, man, what do I need to do so a year from now I can see my daughter and be there for her birthday? 10 years from now I can walk my daughter down the aisle. I'm not thinking about the integrity of the league, so to speak. I'm thinking about what's best for me and my family moving forward, the same way the league is going to do what's in its best interest moving forward as well.
Chauncey Billups goes from looking out for his players in the locker room to, I got a family that I want to see again. Like this, the moment he's in cuffs. That's fair to say. All right. Tre, I appreciate you taking the time out of what I assume is a very busy day, and it sounds like you're a fan of the NBA. You got your Clippers tickets. We're all fans of the NBA, but when something like this happens, it's the perfect aligning of the stars, and it creates this perfect storm. So before we let you go, just want to afford you the opportunity to deliver any final thoughts if you got them.
Yeah, it's interesting. Factions are starting to develop. The NBA is on one side, the players' union is on another, the players themselves are on another, and there's going to be some type of congruency and some type where interests are against other interests. But yeah, it's sad to see something like this. Mm-hmm. We're hoping that there's light at the end of the tunnel, but it's just so early and premature. But I think we can expect more defendants, more charges, and this is going to last a while.
The voice of Tre Lovell, trial attorney, extensive experience with fraud, Ponzi schemes, and gambling cases, joining us on Give and Go today. When we come back, we have an official statement from the NBPA, that's the Players Association. I will read it right after this.